Hi, you're listening to a Pod for Good Media Network podcast. We are a network that provides podcasting production services and a supportive community in which podcasters can thrive. If you're a podcaster local in the Tulsa area, we would love to have your show on the network. If you are interested in starting one, we would love to help you get started. Find us online at podforgoodmedia.com and fill out our Pod With Us form. Happy podcasting. Welcome to another episode of Pod for Good, a podcast where we learn from those doing good in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and the world, why they care, what we can do, and most importantly, what you, the listener, can do. Pod for Good is produced and edited by Pod for Good Media and can be found anywhere you get your podcasts. I'm your chief philanthropod and class clown for not getting schooled in pickleball by retired school teachers, Jesse Ulrich.
And I'm your vice admiral philanthropod and class clown for senior improv groups, Chris Miller.
And today our guest is Eileen Bradshaw, CEO at Life Senior Services.
We talked to Eileen about what we all have to look forward to as we approach our senior years, how Life Senior Services keeps seniors connected and active, and of course, how we can get our own parents line dancing at the senior center.
Enjoy. We're very excited to have Eileen from Life Senior Services on the podcast today. Eileen, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
Well, doing good.
Good.
Feeling spry. There's going to be a lot of jokes about aging and muscles and whatnot today.
Yeah.
I have a feeling, knowing Chris and I, but both Chris and I have parents who are older, who are still living at home. And so we're actually incredibly curious about what Life Senior Services offers. So can you just give us a quick rundown?
Maybe not a quick rundown, but
Yeah.
I can give you a rundown.
You can give us a rundown.
I can give you a rundown. So Life's primary objective is to help people age independently and with dignity and really make that chapter of life, no pun intended, something that's exciting and invigorating. When I was younger, I looked at aging as something sad. And the older I get, the realize it doesn't have to be that way, right? And we serve folks, depending on the program, from age 50 to over 100. So there's a couple of different generations in our service area. And those needs vary. So we have things starting with 50 and above. We have the Active Senior Center. You can go do line dancing. We have an improv group. We have a folk band whose name is One Foot In. They name themselves, not me.
Perfect.
There's line dancing, there's yoga, all kinds of cool things to help keep you physically and mentally active, but mainly it's connecting with people, right? Because isolation is the enemy of all of us, and especially as we age. So there's that stuff, which is really fun. We have Medicare assistance. I think I thought that when I turned 65, Medicare would just come upon me like the tooth fairy. It turns out it doesn't work that way. It's pretty complicated. So we help folks with that. We have a whole education department, which we're getting ready to do something in February about safe online dating for seniors. We have things on tax, and we have sales tax abatement, all the really sexy parts of aging. We have a big volunteer program, keeps people engaged. We have help connecting with the appropriate volunteer opportunity. We have something called Give 5. So you come and you sign up and you learn about the community in the morning, and you get on a big green bus in the afternoon and you go visit places where you can volunteer. That's a super cool program because you see people come in nervous and they don't know anybody. And at the end of 5 weeks, they're like, oh, I only want to volunteer if Chris is going to be there. I mean, they really make those kind of connections. We have Vintage Magazine. I don't know if you guys get that yet. It goes to about 30,000 homes in Tulsa, focuses on issues that might be interesting to seniors. But I will tell you that, I've had 20-year-olds in the grocery store tell me that they find it interesting. Cheech Marin is on the cover this
I
month.
have seen it, yes.
Yeah, I have memories of him with Cheech and Chong. So it was weird to see him as this art collecting philanthropist. It's fun to see that transition. So those are just some of the things we do. There's actually even more. And what I think is really, for me, impressive to an organization that I came to when it was already mature is that the folks that I ended up getting to work with here are constantly ideating for emerging needs of seniors. So we have a senior line. So you can call us and say, I want a plumber that gives a senior discount. Or you can call us and say, my sister just died and she was the caregiver for my 94-year-old mother. That's now my role. I don't know where to start.
Yep.
We have Adult Day Health, which is a safe place for folks who might have cognitive impairment to come during the day. So we really have everything from things to help keep you active and engaged to assistances when maybe that isn't the case anymore.
I think a lot of people, when they think of life senior services, they also think of the actual housing for
Or vintage
seniors
housing, yes.
as well. I think that was my first introduction
Okay.
through a United Way Day of Caring, coming and helping out at one of the facilities. So can you talk a little bit about how the housing works?
I sure can. So Life is its own 501c3, and we have 2 affiliate 501c3s. Vintage Housing is one, and we have a PACE clinic. So Vintage Housing, we have 19 senior apartment communities for low to moderate income seniors in Tulsa and the surrounding areas. We are hoping to be able to build the 20th one adjacent to our new senior center, the Roma Berry Center for Seniors. So we've had some zoning, and we're starting to work on the funding for that. To me, the magic part of vintage housing is its affordability. It really is affordable, but the community and connections. So it started, I think our first complex was in 1992, maybe, and they built pretty consistently throughout the years. And those communities, we have people that moved in together, and some people move out, some people pass away, but they form really tight-knit communities. And the case managers at Life are always there. So you have independent seniors and they're living in community with each other. But if they need help filling out a SNAP application, or if they need to apply for a housing voucher, or they have a loss and they need grief support, Life Senior Services provides all of those services within those communities. So they don't have to really go looking. The assistance is built in. So I love that partnership.
I'm going to pitch you an idea that people have been trying to get me to do, which is just for children who are in their 30s and 40s, we spend a lot of our times doing like technological issues with our parents, Netflix passwords, or Google Drive not syncing, or the smart bulb we installed isn't working, or whatever. I imagine those issues come up a lot too. Apparently, I'm very good at fixing these problems. So, like, I'm looking for you to hire me to fix people's technology problems. So, in case you ever need that, I am available and I'm very good at it.
That is wonderful, because we actually have like iPhone camp. We do some tech camps because it's a huge challenge.
Yes.
And especially if we say we want you to stay connected. Well, if I can't use my phone,
yeah,
or you're trying to send me pictures of my adored grandchild in Connecticut and I can't, so it's actually a big barrier. So, we can talk about this. Yeah.
To try to get my parents-in-law to figure out how to switch their input to their Roku, because their TV is not one that automatically switch inputs when you activate something.
Yeah.
It's just like it's at least 2 or 3 times a week I have to figure something out just by words and a description and not being able to see the actual thing.
Not be able to see it.
Yeah. So like, it's a fun little challenge for me.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I have to ask, because you offer so many different services. Are you all, is this all private funding, and are you generating revenue, or is it just donation based?
We are a nonprofit, but it is funded in a variety of ways. So to your point about vintage housing, those have all been financed. We've had a little bit of private, not a little bit, we've had some private philanthropy, which is very needed, but tax credit housing. So that's a big part of that.
Yeah. For
our adult day health, we have people that pay privately, but we also have the VA that pays. We have Medicaid that pays for some folks. Our senior center members pay $100 a year. I will tell you, it's the best deal in town. And we have scholarships for that as well. We do some medical transportation if you need to get the doctor's appointments, and that's all done through philanthropic donations. So it really varies. Like our Medicare, all of our Medicare education, we have a partnership with the Oklahoma Insurance Department, and they pay for some of it, but it doesn't pay for all of it. So then it's supplemented with philanthropic donations. So kind of depends on the program, but it's really fascinating because there's so many layers to Life Senior Services. Some of them, like our tax assistance, you have to be 64 and household income of $64,000 a year under Medicaid. Medicare, obviously, is 65 and up. So it all varies.
I'm curious about the different issues. So like the website talks about your sort of life beginning at 50. What are, just to prepare Chris and I for 7-ish years from now, like what things should we be preparing for or looking forward to, I should say?
People work longer now, so I don't think probably some of these things will be an opportunity for you at 50 necessarily. But I really think that aging gives us an opportunity. Andy McDowell had a great quote about how aging makes her feel like she's been able to take off her mask. And I think that's true for a lot of people. Like the older we get, the more that we know ourselves and the more comfortable we feel. So what do you have to look forward to? Well, you have to figure out Medicare. You have to figure out, as you may lose some friends to moving off to Florida or worse outcomes, You have to figure out how to meet new people at a time where you may not be working. So you have to be a little bit more intentional about how you spend your time. And I think it's really easy to put on 24-hour news shows or channels and yell at the TV. And we see that a lot. We see people who come to the senior center and they're like, I really had to get away from the talking heads. So I think it's a time to pick up a guitar if you've never taken a lesson. It's a time. The folks that are in our improv group, none of them have any theater background. We have a musical theater collaboration called the Orbit Initiative. And when I was growing up, there were only like 4 shows a year for kids. It was Wizard of Oz, Charlie Brown, and Cinderella. So we just did a production of that Cinderella, the same score. And I turned the corner and I could hear the song where Cinderella and the Prince were doing a duet. And it sounded just like Leslie Ann Warren when I was like 6 years old. But when I turned the corner, Cinderella was about 78 and the Prince was about 80. And it was just awesome. So what do you have to look forward to? You can reinvent yourself, which there's not many times in our lives that we get to do that.
Yeah. I think Chris and I are both very excited about the improv class.
Well, and
we'll get you a fake ID. Maybe you can participate.
Yeah.
I can also imagine that health and staying active is also a big focus.
Absolutely.
Well. So what services do you have to help with that?
So our senior center offerings and a lot of our education offerings and volunteer, they're all geared toward trying to keep you out and about. So there's tons of physical activity classes at the senior center. Like I said, everything from Tai Chi for balance, chair yoga, trauma-informed yoga. Line dancing gets about 5,000 steps in an hour. When you're a newcomer, you are in the back row. So you can kind of learn. I've been there 5 years and I'm still in the back row. Don't get too ambitious there. So lots of physical things, but also intellectually stimulating things. We have a writer's symposium that we've done. We have creative writing. The improv class is actually going to be doing an autobiographical performance, which I think is pretty impactful.
Yeah.
Mahjong. People come in and they play Rumi Cube and they play Mahjong and a whole host of other games. We have folks that just show up to the senior center at 8 o'clock in the morning, get a cup of coffee, and then go hang out. And they'll play some games, they'll visit. But just that art of conversation is pretty amazing. And the music classes. We'd always had music classes at our other centers, but they've really just exploded. We have a world-class harmonica instructor. And then I think we're at 6 different guitar classes right now.
Yeah.
So, all the research on what learning a language, which music is to your brain and what that does for it. I mean, it's a lot of fun to be in community with people, but you don't have to be good to get the benefits for your brain. It's a pretty forgiving atmosphere.
That's awesome. I know my mom's experience isn't different than a lot of people's, but she spent most of her life trying to be useful and helpful, going out of her way to help people. And now she had the misfortune of raising 3 very independent sons who married independent women who don't need a lot of help from my mother. And so it's difficult sometimes for her.
Where do you channel that?
Yes, to still want to feel useful and helpful. And that's something that she struggles with. And like I said, I can't imagine that a lot of people have that same experience as they get older.
For sure. I mean, I think that's incredibly common. And that's where especially that volunteer piece comes in, because regardless of what your background, whether you had been a stay-at-home parent or whether you'd been a high-powered executive, you've developed skill sets that lots of nonprofits in this community need. And nonprofits really can't operate without that kind of volunteer help. So it's not a manufactured need. It's a real need and a real economic driver. So we love a displaced mother. Please come. We've got lots of places to plug you in.
Yeah, she's a former nurse and therapist.
Oh, wow.
So she has a lot of skills.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But that maternal instinct is what we really like to leverage.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. I can imagine.
And my father, who's living alone in our house in Broken Arrow after my mom passed away, he just needs, other than doctor's appointments, he doesn't have a lot of interactions with people other than his family. And trying to get him out to do things is always, because he was never one to like go meet friends anyway. And so it's very much like, please go have dinner with somebody. So I'm just gonna send him your way. He's probably gonna listen to this episode anyway, so he's gonna know.
We have a great senior center member who lost his wife, and he will tell you the story that his wife had been their social director their whole marriage. Like she picked the church, and they became part of that church, and then she coordinated the dinner dates, all of that. And when she passed away, obviously he grieved her, but he grieved having that social chairman, right? And he went to the doctor, and the doctor said, "I can write you a prescription for an antidepressant today, but I can't prescribe what you're going to need to go on living." And he told him to try the senior center, which sounds kind of trite, but I mean, he will be the first one to tell you. He said, I've signed up for everything. I've done things I hate, but they were going out to lunch afterwards.
Yeah.
And so I just did the class. And then it's really interesting to see what an ambassador he has really grown into because he can tell you firsthand. And I think that happens with a lot of men. One thing that's really interesting when you talk about your dad and surviving your mom's loss, we have a lot of men who are caregivers. And that may not have been the role that they played in their family until their wife. It's typically dementia. And so we've started our first ever men's caregiver group. It's meeting for the first time, I think, today, because we have big caregiver support groups and they're really important. Mostly, though, they're women. And so the men who do find it's nice to be in a space with other men experiencing those challenges. So I do think a lot of times our experiences sometimes are formed by our gender. And you deal with some of those outcomes a little bit differently.
Yeah. Yeah. He was a caregiver for my mom for 8 years.
Wow.
Yeah. At the nursing home she was at every day. And so it was really like both like psychologically, physiologically held off a lot of issues while taking care of her.
Yes.
And so now he's dealing with all those things now, which my sister and I knew was going to happen. That his body was going to fall apart.
He was going to release. Yes.
Yeah. And so we've been dealing with all those things still. It's been 4 years. And it's just like, he's like, I don't remember any of these problems before. I was like, yeah, because you were focused on something.
Because you weren't at the doctor for yourself. Because that is very common. Well, we'd love to have
Dad, I know you're listening. I'm going to send you along. We'll teach him how to play pickleball. Let's talk about these pickleball courts because Chris and I are amateur pickleballers.
Yes.
How many courts are we talking about here?
We have 4.
All right.
But they are beautiful.
Indoor, I'm guessing?
Indoor, yes. We had a conversation early on, and I remember it was like sunny and 70 and the flag was not blowing at all. And we talked about outdoor pickleball courts because they were obviously a lot less expensive. And the gentleman across from me said, oh yeah, I mean, we play outdoor, no problem. Because unless it's a day like today. I was like, oh yeah, we can't have outdoor. So we have indoor courts, climate controlled, and they have the sports court surface. They're beautiful.
Very
it's really nice because we have several really adept volunteers. One is a retired eye doctor, and he's actually gone to North Carolina, gotten certified, and he teaches pickleball 101, the kindest, gentlest, most patient man in the world. And he's really an evangelist for pickleball. So he is bringing lots of people into the fold and in a very patient way. Yeah.
No, it's just a fun sport that doesn't, the learning curve on it is, you can get into it a lot quicker than I feel like you can most other sports. So like to get really good at it takes time, but just to play and have fun does not take too much time.
You can kind of hop into it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are playing, with their grandchildren.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of a really great intergenerational. There's not a lot of sports that an 80-year-old and an 18-year-old can play together.
Yeah. But an 80-year-old can kick the crap out of an 18-year-old.
That's right. And the 80-year-old might be victorious. So that's a really unique aspect.
I mean, I said this off air, but a friend of mine got schooled by these 2 retired school teachers in their 70s. And I was just like, okay, like you do not have to be like, it is not about being in shape. It is about your mind. And it's not even like hand-eye coordination because like it's just knowing where to be. And I was incredibly impressed by that pair in Bixby. What other, like, Chris and I are both like active type people. Like, so you have pickleball courts. Are there other like sports or fitness type things?
In the same facility. We have retractable basketball goals. So we have basketball.
Very nice.
I've mentioned line dancing, and I think that people sort of think of something cute like Cupid Shuffle. That's not it. These are very serious people who dance the heck out of themselves. And they meet Mondays and Wednesdays. Sometimes we get upwards of 60 people in that class. And it is a real aerobic event. The thing that I really like about the senior center and the physical activity is that if there are 2 people that want a class, we can generally figure out a way to make it happen. So a lot of things have really sprung up from somebody saying, hey, I used to live here and we did this. We have a functional movement class. It's a retired union boss. She's wonderful. And she teaches the class. She suffers no fools. But it's the functional movement it's so large we had to move it to the Pickleball and Activity Center. And the real point of that, you get a lot of great movement, but the real point is that if you fall, which we hope you don't, it teaches you how to get up. I mean, all of those things you learned, you can get back up. So there's all kinds of, like I said, we have 3 different kinds of yoga right now. Yeah. There's just a plethora of physical opportunities. I can't even mention them all.
So are most of the classes taught by members of the senior center?
No, we do pay most of our instructors. We do have a few volunteer instructors, but we do pay most of our instructors. And the quality of instruction is really good, to be honest.
Yeah.
Not that the volunteers that we have aren't good. They're great too, but we do have some exceptional instructors.
Well, I noticed on your website you talked about StoryCorps, and so the act of getting people to talk about their stories. So are you in partnership with like the national chapter of StoryCorps, or is it just like teaching people how to do?
We're not. I mean, we would encourage people to go on and do that, and we do encourage, and we probably shouldn't even have it on our website because we're not an official partner. But to your point, we are encouraging people to make sure that they get their story out there. And we work, either whether it's in the writing group or whether it's in the improv, it's helping people realize how interesting they really are, right? Remember that show Biography on A&E?
Yeah.
You'd be like, I don't care about what this person, and every single person's story was fascinating. That's what I learned from that show. And that's how it is at the senior center, really with all of life senior services, probably everywhere, but helping people realize that their story is worth telling. I'm sure that you hope to have some sort of a really good record of your parents' stories. I don't have that of mine. I mean, I have my memories, but I never got them to commit it to a form that I could share. And I hate that. So we're really all about trying to get people to commit that.
I sat my dad down about 7 years ago, and with much less fancy podcasting equipment, but just like made him retell me all of his life stories.
I love
so
that.
I would get that down. Yeah. I should have him do it again and see if and then compare the two and see how stories have changed.
See if he was telling the truth.
Yeah.
I know my mom has always wanted to write a book about some of the more interesting stories she's dealt with as a therapist, because she's done all kinds. She's done behavioral health. She's done substance abuse counseling. She's done weight management, just in basically every type, couples therapy, like every type of therapy, she's done it. And she has some crazy stories. She's pretty sure at one point that she interacted with some people that were in witness protection because they looked and just acted and sounded like they were from the mob, like from just like Hollywood casting of it. So she's always wanted to tell those stories, but she's always kind of, I think on some level lacked some of the confidence, like you're saying, oh, is my story really that interesting kind of a thing. So I think having a safe place where people are saying, yes, you're interesting, tell your story, I think could do a lot for people.
It does. Right now we have all of these forms up that have a picture of Martin Luther King Jr. and people are writing what their dream is. And that is just those. I mean, 3 or 4 sentences. It's really interesting to see the variety and people, kind of getting vulnerable on a piece of paper on the wall. So a safe place, I think, is the key.
Yeah. So I would imagine there are a lot of different organizations, both local and national, that you partner with. So what are some of the organizations that you usually collaborate that help you all?
I think Tulsa has just an incredibly collaborative nonprofit community. So we collaborate. Family and Children's has embedded mental health professionals with our independent case managers, and they're great. We have a grant collaboration with Domestic Violence Intervention Services. Elder abuse is just such a sad topic, but we have an elder abuse case manager that works for life through a grant with Divis, so we partner with them a lot. We work with the food bank. We work with Meals on Wheels. The food bank prepares all of the meals for our adult day health centers and all the snacks. We have, we've had conversations with lots and lots of organizations have aging populations. So whether it's faith groups or whether we've had some conversations around the AIDS community and how the advancing age and how can we collaborate to support. So we're getting ready to have a meeting the end of this month with a number of organizations. We, collaborate with Morton, and this one's with the Day Center and several other organizations to talk about the rapidly rising number of unhoused seniors and the separate needs that they have versus just the total unhoused population. And so, we're going to get together and see what that would look like.
I know demographically, there's been talk over the past decade about the sort of explosion of people entering their senior ages. And I guess my question is there something you're already working on to prepare for this? Or is it just we know this is coming, trying to get the resources to, where to house them, how to take care of them, giving them things to do? I imagine this is a next chapter of
It is
your
a constantly
organization, yeah.
evolving story for sure. And we already they call that silver tsunami, I think is the
That's a
little term.
great name. Whoever named that, well done.
I know. So we're already on the cusp of that. So trying to help people navigate financially. I mean, we're not financial advisors and we never will be, but some of those things that we talked about, like the property tax and how to figure out our Medicare Part D counseling. I was at a meeting today. The average person saved like $2,100. I mean, financially, people are living longer, and that's a big concern. And so what does that look like? Housing, that's where we're trying to go ahead and expand vintage housing. The socialization piece, again, people are living longer. I had a woman personally tour with me at the senior center, which is not something I often get to do. And she was lovely, but she said, I lost my husband 12 years ago. My sisters are gone. 3 of my best friends are gone. I have to come and meet some new people because I've lived longer than I thought I was going to. And I want to be happy and I've got to make some changes. So trying to prepare the transportation piece, we had a grant with COVID funds. Actually, when COVID started, Life Senior Services did not shut down. I was so proud of it. Like our adult day health staff became home health care. I mean, people just redeployed in new ways. It was really amazing. I'd only been there about 4 months when that hit. And yeah, so it was quite the learning curve.
Yeah.
It really was. But as the vaccines became available, we were all relieved about that. I don't know if you remember the portal. We've kind of talked about seniors and technological challenges.
Oh, that thing was...
It was a nightmare.
Right out of the gate, it was a nightmare.
It was a nightmare. So we were all working from our laundry rooms trying to capture appointments for people who didn't have computers. And I remember being so thrilled that I'd gotten an appointment for a woman at the fairgrounds to get her shot. And she was so excited. And then she said, "Mom, I don't drive." I mean, I'm like, okay. So we had to arrange transportation. And then I'm like, do we want to drop off a 96-year-old at the fairgrounds with no navigation, right? So it really, we started understanding how layered that was going to be. We got a grant towards the end of that to provide transportation for vaccines. But by that time, kind of the people who wanted to be vaccinated mostly had been. So NCOG very graciously let us use that for any medical transportation. We'd never had that before. It was like opening the floodgates. We had no idea how many people across all incomes were missing doctor's appointments and not accessing healthcare because they couldn't get a ride. Like the daughter was going to take them and she had a meeting. I've been that daughter. I'm not judging, right?
Yeah,
but something comes up at work and you can't do it. And what's mom going to do? And people think, oh, well, they take an Uber. Not everybody is navigating that.
Not to mention some hospitals, depending on what the procedure is, you may have to have someone
you can't have
there.
It done if you don't have a ride waiting there.
Yeah.
No, that's true. So there's so much of that. So that is something that we really discovered was a huge need. It made sense intellectually, but I don't think we realized how many people were struggling with that. So that's something that we are continuing, and that has really been impactful and something that we probably wouldn't have chosen to become a transportation company all on our own. But when we found out how huge that was and the impact it was having, it just made sense.
I've always been interested in this. Executive directors of nonprofits, most people do not understand what your days are like, right? Most people don't even know what like a CEO's day is like, but like for an organization trying to help people, I'm always curious about like, what is your ideal day at work?
So Life Senior Services is interesting because, as we mentioned, we have 3 501c3s. So I have 3 boards of directors and 3 different mission statements. I mean, they're all serving seniors, but they're a little disparate. So an ideal day, it just kind of depends on which organization, because sometimes you're leaning more into one. My favorite thing to be able to go do, I got to hang out at the senior center quite a bit yesterday for a variety of reasons. And I love that. I love being able to, you get involved in projects and you work hard to raise the money. And I've never been involved in one that I didn't feel like turned out well and worked. But the senior center, the active senior center is, you just really see it. Like it's instant and it's pretty great. You go in on a Sunday afternoon and people are there and they're hanging out, and then you go in on Monday. So, and then the adult day health center that we have, also when I get to spend time over there, it's different, but you also see there's a conference room that we have that has a glass wall, and they don't let me sit looking out at that anymore, because at pickup time in the afternoon for adult day health, there is a man that comes in. I don't know his name, but he picks up his wife and she runs into his arms like those World War II bride shots. And he kisses her on the head, and there's a daughter who picks up her mother, and her mother has a baby doll every day. And the daughter first picks up the baby and talks to the baby and then gives it to the mother, and they go out together. And those two encounters happen every day. I cry every time I see it because that's the purpose of adult day health, to keep people safe, but also to preserve those relationships where they don't become so beleaguered as a caregiver that they don't have that connection anymore. Yeah. And so that is something that spending my day getting to witness that makes the budget meetings and those kind of things much more worthwhile, right? Nobody probably gets into this work because they want to try to figure out how to save another $10,000. But those interactions really, are what. And excited about the potential for new housing units. We know that's the number one problem on Senior Line. We get people, rents went up. A lot of housing stock changed hands during the pandemic. People that had been in the same apartment for 10 years got a new landlord and they said, you can stay. It's just going to be 3 times what you've been paying.
Yeah.
So those kinds of opportunities make it really interesting.
You bring up an interesting point when you talk about caregivers, because it's just human nature. You may love and adore someone you're taking care of, but trying to maintain that while not becoming resentful of the way it's changing your own life too is a very difficult thing. I know the focus of your services are on the seniors themselves. Is there support that you provide for caregivers?
We actually have a case manager that does nothing but caregiver support. So we have those groups that I mentioned, and like the men's group, but she also does one-on-one sessions. And we started that a couple of years ago, and we kind of envisioned it as a 3 to 5 session situation. Like maybe you get it, or a loved one gets a tough diagnosis, and you need to talk through it. You need to talk about the grief. You need to talk about the financial fear. You need to talk about all of those things. Yeah. And then maybe you take a hiatus, and then the disease progresses, and maybe there's a new stage, and you need to come in and parse through what's happening then. Maybe you have to put them in a facility, and you need to reckon with all of that. It hasn't quite worked out in the episodic way. There's a lot of folks that really kind of need that ongoing. Yeah. And the groups are great, but that one-on-one has proved to be very important. The thing that I think is really beautiful about that is that there is no charge for those services. And even for people, we have a lot of people that avail themselves of those services and make a donation eventually. So at some point they realize, oh, wow, probably I would have gotten charged most places. But sometimes making an appointment and doing the transaction of showing your insurance card or making a payment makes it seem a little more real. And something about being able to just call us and come in, it makes it seem like I'm not really seeking help. I'm just kind of stopping by. And it lowers that barrier because seniors are the least likely demographic to seek any kind of support or psychological help. We have a lot of folks your age that come in to seek support because they're caregivers for their parents. So even though we're Life Senior Services, we certainly support a lot of younger caregivers as well. We have a grandchild. I knew her and I know her grandmother, and she's like, I'm not her primary caregiver, but the changes she's going through are really hard. And so she's come in and done some of that.
Yeah. So you talked about the volunteer opportunities for these seniors to go. I think most people enjoy going and feeling purposeful, right? Doing something to help others. Like, what are give some examples of like the volunteer opportunities that people can do?
So we have a couple. When I, at a previous role, I had a Harvard educated attorney who only wanted to volunteer arranging flowers. She loved it. She's like, I've always wanted to be a florist, but Harvard didn't teach that, so I became an attorney. But it was such a great escape for her, right? And that's what we see in volunteering. Some people come in and say, I was an attorney. I would love to help an organization with their bylaws. And we have other people who say, I was an attorney, and nobody ever better mention that again because I want to make balloon animals and arrange flowers. Yeah. So you can sit down and talk. We have a volunteer team. You can sit down and talk and say what you're interested in. We may have in our little existing opportunities, we have a lot of nonprofits that call us and we can say, oh, you like dogs? Well, here's 5 places to go. Or you want it, literacy is important to you? Well, here are 4 places it might. We also have people that come in and look through those opportunities and say, I mean, these all seem nice, but none of them are speaking to me. So then we can kind of talk through like what does speak to you? What are you interested in? And we have enough relationships. I think we have MOUs with some crazy amount, over 100 different nonprofits. And so we can help find that opportunity for you. One of the things that when you go to the airport, you see the little desk, it says Life Senior Services, and you'll see the folks there.
Yeah.
That's a super popular volunteer opportunity.
Yeah.
Super popular. And that was interesting to me. So I tried to talk to them. Like, I think it's cool, but it's the camaraderie of those airport ambassadors together. So that is what seems to, and they do absolutely help travelers, find everything. It's a very worthwhile thing, and it saves the city so much money because they would be paying someone to do that.
Yeah.
So, and then we have other people that really want to be one-on-one with the person they're helping. They want to do reading partners. And then we have other people that say, I want to help, but I don't want to get too attached. So I want to sort clothing for babies in need, but I don't want to hold the baby in need. So everybody kind of gets to establish their own emotional boundaries and do what's most comfortable with their own lives. And that can change too, right? Sometimes you may start out at reading partners and then you may want to do something completely different. And you're not stuck, which is kind of nice.
So you kind of assist them in figuring out what the right fit is, whether it's a specific task or job, or it's a specific organization they want to help,
or an interest. And we can also, we don't love that, but if you start someplace and you're like, I don't want to do this, but I don't want to tell her she's real nice, we can break up for you, which, and help you find the next thing. That Give 5 program that we talked about is really cool because we just started another class and I think there's 15 people in it. And it's a mix of men and women. And in the morning, you might learn about food insecurity. And in the afternoon, you go to organizations where you can volunteer that address food insecurity. So you really learn a lot about the community. I've lived here forever, but I'm constantly amazed at what's happening out there that I've never heard of. And that's what we hear from the Give 5 alums. It's not for everybody. Not everybody wants to get on a bus and go look at a bunch of things. But for folks who really want to do something but don't know where to start, it's a great way. Like, I think everybody should have to do that the day after they retire. And then the Give 5 piece comes, and the commitment is, well, you give 5 hours a month. So it's a pretty low ask.
Yeah. So for anyone who wants to be involved, is the senior center the best entry point for them if they're interested in either the classes or talking about seniors?
It's a great way to come and tour the senior center, at least. I have people that say, I play Mahjong with a group. I have a book club. I really just want to volunteer. So you can just call us. We have one phone number. It's 918-664-9000. We have a website. And you can talk to somebody, a live person, and then we can kind of help you navigate that, figure out where you want to get started. Like I said, some people, it's a tangible thing. They need help. And so our senior line is the right place. For others, they just want to get engaged. So I would say that would be volunteering at the senior center.
Yeah. And say if you had a parent and you wanted to gift them a membership to help them get out of the house and connect more, that's something you can do as well.
Absolutely. I think that we really encourage that as a present.
Yeah.
And it's like I said, it's $100. So if your parent has a friend, giving one to that friend too. Sometimes, there's plenty of people who come on their own, but we find that if they come in together,
to go with
makes
them.
It kind of, yeah.
Very cool. How can those who are not yet seniors help your organization?
Well, you mentioned Day of Caring. There's all kinds of volunteer opportunities, not for seniors, but serving seniors. So there's a group of retired police that will go and help people clean up their yard. So, and we have a big holiday project. We have an event in the summer. It's a fundraiser. And if you want to come and man the silent auction, or if you want to teach a class, like your storytelling, you guys would be awesome at doing. And it doesn't have to be 12 weeks. It can be, we're going to do this for 2 hours and we're going to teach you everything we know in 2 hours, and good luck to you. So there's all kinds of things like that. Now, you got to pass a background check, guys. I don't want to scare you, but aside from that, there's lots of volunteer opportunities. Donating your time, donating funds, craft items. That's something that a lot of people, they've got yarn and they've given up knitting, or somebody passed away. Those kind of things. Pickleball paddles. If you give up the sport in anger, we can take them.
Perfect.
Very cool. Well, so, okay. I used to ask this question a lot, and I stopped only because, like, at some organizations, it was almost too overwhelming to ask. But I feel like for an organization this size, I think this would be an interesting question, which is, if you got an extra, let's say, million
Mm-hmm.
tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
what would you do with it? Is $1 million even enough? For the thing
I know. I was like,
do?
maybe we should say 10 million.
Yeah, 10
because I
million,
feel
yeah.
like
10 million, I would just
scale.
go ahead and build that apartment complex today. That's kind of a nice number. You know, with $1 million, the way things are right now, I think I would be focusing a lot. I'd probably split some of it on transportation because we've just gotten some cars, but we need sustaining. And then the other, I would put, we've been asked to partner with Tulsa Parks at doing some programming for seniors at some there. And I would put some of it there, and then even more caregiver support.
Yeah.
Because I don't think there can be enough of that, right?
For sure.
Probably not a very glamorous answer.
Yeah, so 10 million new, just entirely new apartment complex.
Yes.
1 million adding and fixing two things you already have.
Exactly.
All right.
Mhm.
Yeah. As we've been doing this podcast, the inflation has changed.
I know.
So
$1 million.
I need to rephrase that question. Yeah.
Enough.
Yeah.
But it's also scale of the organization.
That's
$1 million
also true.
is a lot of money. Don't get me wrong.
No matter what.
And it could do an awful lot of good. So but that's.
Yeah.
Speaking of $1 million, if people do want to help out financially,
Mhm.
I assume you take private donations, and how does that work?
All
and how
the time.
They connect with you?
You can call us. You can donate on our website. We will. Some people want to come, and I had a young woman the other day bring in a check for $500. It was her Christmas present from her family. That's what they do for each other for Christmas, and that was really cool. And she wanted to bring it in because she wanted to see what was going to happen with it, right?
Yeah.
So I get that totally. Some people really don't want to see us. They don't want me to ask them for more money. So they would like to just do it online. And I think they were mailing a check. So however you want to do it, we're highly flexible in accepting donations.
Yes, that's good. Is there anything that we haven't asked you about or haven't talked about that you think we should?
Yes, we didn't talk about this. So there's a lot of seniors that are really smart and they're physically agile and they want to work. They might want to work part-time because they don't want to impact their Social Security, or some need to work and some don't. Like our drivers, we have drivers for our PACE, taking folks to medical appointments. They're all like retired executives. They just can't sit at home all the time.
Right.
So I guess I have been hoping that with the constriction and, for a while, it was really hard to find employees. Like we all know that it was very difficult. It's eased a little bit, but I kind of hope that this will make the workforce take another look at seniors because I still think there's a lot of bias and discrimination that goes on in the workplace, kind of tacitly. And so if people are listening to this and they've got open positions, they need to think about, okay, do the work ethic of that generation, those generations tends to be pretty strong. I'm sure there's some exceptions, but it's a pretty good bet. And so many folks are cognitively exceptional and physically great. So just because they've got some gray hair or no hair, or however you want to look at it, I think that we need to be actively trying to recruit.
Do you have any seniors who are interested in audio and video editing?
I'm sure I do.
I could always use some help.
I will get back to you on that.
All right.
But yes, I'm sure.
Well, excellent. Eileen, thank you so much. This was great. And we'll list your website and everything in our show notes, and possibly be sending our...
And we will both be talking to our parents.
Yes, we will be talking to our parents.
I would love to be their personal tour guide.
All right.
I love that.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you all for listening to our conversation with Eileen. Please give them your money, give them your time, send your parents there. It's an amazing organization that literally is doing so much work to make sure that people are enjoying their lives as they deserve to. Please make sure to follow and support Pod for Good on whatever social media network you morally are accepting of at this particular time. As long as you share it, maybe give us a review, we will be happy. As always, Tulsa, get it done. Broken Arrow, I got my eye on you. Be kind to one another.